Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we're going to be taking a look at a Golurk deck that has gone and become pretty gosh darned good, ladies and gentlemen. Now, it has just been released very, very recently in Altered Genesis over in Japan, and it's one of those Pokemon, obviously it's all based around Golurk, it's one of those Pokemon that we looked at it and went, that sounds amazing, but it sounds incredibly awkward. Now, the first attack for 1 Psychic Energy does 40 damage and is not affected by resistance. Let's just ignore that, shall we? The main attack here for 2 Colorless Energy, Relic Fist. 160 damage, just so long as you have 0 supporter cards in the discard pile. If you have 1 supporter card in your discard pile, this attack fails. Now, it's only on a stage 1, so there's not a huge amount of commitment going on to actually get this rolling. And it's for a single energy attachment, more on that later, so that's not a huge problem. The problem is trying to win without supporters. So we're going to have a look at the list in a minute in terms of how we're actually drawing without supporters. But starting off, we need Zebstrika. And I think we do need Zebstrika here. Now, Zebstrika's got the ability Sprint. Once during your turn, you may discard your hand and draw 4 cards. That's pretty gosh darned important. Yes, Pidgeotto is an option, but I don't think Pidgeotto does enough. If you're playing a deck where you're not playing supporters, looking at the top 2 cards of your deck, putting 1 in your hand, 1 on the bottom of your deck, I don't think it's enough. I think if you're actually going for a supporterless deck, you need this. I think you've got to go Zebstrika. I think that's pretty gosh darned important. Okay, so what other Pokemon are we playing here? Honestly, not many. Just Jirachi. Jirachi becomes super important here as well, because you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, you get to put a trainer card in your hand, and then he goes to sleep, but you use a skateboard to make sure that you can free retreat, so that's not a problem. It reduces your retreat by 1 and lets you retreat if you're asleep, and it really is Jirachi and Zebstrika here that allow you to just roll. This is how you're drawing enough cards. This is how you're getting going well enough without actually having access to supporters. Although there is one more we're playing here, and it is Oricorio. Now, it's not for the attacks are terrible. But the ability says, if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you may draw 3 cards. Now, it doesn't stack, so you only play 1 Oricorio. But it means that every time you get a Pokemon KO'd, you're drawing 3 cards. That is really, really nice. And between Zebstrika, Jirachi, and Oricorio, that's how we're getting set up. And you can see that this deck is dedicated to this. This deck is dedicated to, you know what? I am going to roll. I am going to draw. I'm not using supporters, but I've got enough Pokemon here that I'm going to be just alright. Now, energy is where this gets awkward. Japan are currently playing in a Sun and Moon on format, as opposed to our Ultra Prism on format, and honestly, there aren't that many problems with this deck list. It's not a huge issue. One of the issues is they've got both double colorless energy and counter energy, and we don't. Now, what we do have is triple acceleration energy, and that's wonderful, but the problem is you can only play 4 of them. Now, let's say, for argument's sake, you're going up against a Mewtwo and Mew, and they don't have Jirachi out, otherwise that kind of ruins things. You only need to attack twice and you win the game. So you're fine. Even if they do have Jirachi out, you only need to attack 4 times to win the game. 2-hit KOing a tag team GX. And you'll be fine. The issue is, what happens against something like Gardevoir and Sylveon that is going to be healing and you cannot 1-hit KO? What happens if you play against a non-GX deck? Maybe something like the Alolan Ninetales deck we looked at the other day, where you need to attack 6 times to take 6 prizes to win the game because they're not playing any GXs. That's where things get awkward here. Against GXs and 1-hit KOs and all of that, you are absolutely fine using triple acceleration energy and going for it. But outside of that, you kind of want 8 energy. And in Japan, they have that at the moment, and we don't. We've got triple acceleration energy. Now, we do have a couple of options. What you could do is just play a very thin Malamar line. You would literally only need 1 Malamar out at a time. 1 Malamar out would mean that you accelerate 1 energy from your discard to a Golurk, and then you just attach a basic energy and you're off. Cool. That would be an option. Usually in situations like this, I'd be going, we'll just play Welder and some fire energy. But of course, if you play a Welder, then Golurk is going to be in a bad position because you can't use a second attack. You could, and I'm not sure I'm going to recommend this, I'm definitely not, to be fair, you could play Welder and then try and power pad them back in, but then you can only play Welder if you've got a power pad and it gets a little bit awkward. The other option I like very much indeed here is playing Tapu Koko Prism Star with a couple of lightning energy. And then what you do is you Lost Zone Tapu Koko to attach 1 lightning energy to each of 2 Golurk. And then you've got 2 Golurk that essentially become single energy attackers, and then 4 that can use triple acceleration energy, and you're rolling. I really do think you can add in a 1-1 Malamar line, and to be fair, add in Ditto Prism Star as well, you really should be, or a Tapu Koko Prism Star, and then along with triple acceleration energy, I think you'll be okay. I am not worried about the energy here. I think it will work. I think you'll be okay. Now, in terms of the trainer line here, you've got Mysterious Treasure, and that is just amazing. But you are losing Ultra Ball and Nest Ball. Now, generally here, I'd say use Professor Oak's setting. Lets you get 3 Pokemon of different types that are basics and put them onto your bench. And between Golett, Blitzel, Jirachi, Ditto, you've actually got 4 different types. So you're absolutely fine. The problem is you can't really play supporters unless you're using Power Pad to get rid of them, and that gets a little bit awkward. So Pokemon Search can be a bit of a pain. You do have Mysterious Treasure, and that is wonderful. And once you get rolling, you've got Zebstrika, you've got Jirachi, you've got Oricorio. You've got plenty of drawing options, but the first couple of turns can be really awkward here. As you're using Zebstrika to discard a whole bunch of cards, you can actually use Lure Ball here, which lets you flip 3 coins and for each heads put an evolution Pokemon from your discard pile into your hand. That can be really good for getting your Pokemon out of the discard. I like that very much indeed. But that's not necessarily a turn 1 option here. We do play a full 4 Acrobike, and this deck plays Counter Catcher, which you're going to need to get rid of, but switch them out for Custom Catcher, and that gives you a little bit more draw as well. And hopefully, between Mysterious Treasure and the other draw in the deck, you will be able to make this work. You could even consider putting in something like Order Pad, though I personally wouldn't recommend that. Pokemon Search is my biggest issue with this deck. I don't think the energy is a huge problem. I do think that Pokemon Search could be an issue. Outside of that, in terms of Pokemon tools, we've got a skateboard that we need for Jirachi, and we're also playing buff padding here, because Golurk has 140 HP and a retreat cost of 4. Buff padding puts you up to 180. That's pretty lovely. We also play Adventure Bag to try and search them out, because that's going to help very nicely. We also play 1 copy of Island Challenge Amulet. Now, this is a tool so it can be searched out of Adventure Bag, and it's actually really important. You attach it to an EX or GX, it gets 100 less HP, but it gives up 1 fewer prize. This is absolutely crucial for Oricorio, because Oricorio gives up 2 prizes, and the whole point of your deck is that you've got a single energy, single prize Pokemon attacking to do 160 damage. That's pretty important. As soon as you start adding in Oricorio, now you're giving your opponent a 2 prize option, and that kind of ruins your deck. So you need your Island Challenge Amulet here. Being able to search it out with Adventure Bag is actually a really, really good bonus. Outside of that, the deck is pretty straightforward. You're losing a few other cards, but you're not losing anything anybody else isn't losing, so it's not a huge problem. Yes, you're using Rescue Stretcher, but we are going to have Lana's Fishing Rod, which allows you to search for both a Pokemon tool and a Pokemon in your discard pile and shuffle them back into your deck. so that should be alright to get back the few Pokemon you're going to need to recover here. Again, Brock's Grit would be our usual solution, but that gets a little bit awkward. Funnily enough, the one supporter you can afford to play here is Gladion, because Gladion swaps itself for a card in your prizes, so it never actually hits the discard pile, so you can afford to play Gladion here, and Gladion actually becomes really good, because it basically just lets you grab a card from your prizes, and you're not playing any other supporters, so you don't need to worry about, oh, can I afford to use it as my supporter for the turn, so I would not be opposed to playing a couple of extra Gladion in this deck, going past the one that this list plays. This is going to be slightly awkward in our format. I don't think the energy's a problem. I do think the Pokemon search could be a slight issue, but if you can make the deck fast and consistent enough using items, I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. And then you're sitting there with a single prize attacker hitting 160 damage for essentially one energy attachment. I think this is absolutely onto something. Yes, a couple changes will need to be made to this list, but it's a very good starting point, and I think I've shown you what changes could be made. But at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to know what you think about this, so let me know in the comments section. Go nuts, be nice, and then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.